Welcome to everyone. I'm very proud to have this meeting today with you, and I think it's a very nice, very good opportunity to understand better what is happening on the American market about wines in particular. What the world will look like after COVID-19. The pandemic put the world as on hold and then changed it drastically. Some business couldn't weather the storm, others are still striving to adapt to the new normal. Wine business changed too, altering radically the path of wine from the vineyard to the table in a matter of months. Here comes the wine-to-wine exhibition, a new exhibition in Veronafiere, organized by Veronafiere, a unique project developed in extraordinary times whereby Veronafiere in Italy seeks to bring together again the national and international wine community. A new format that blends wine to wine, the traditional training and networking event, as you know, held annually since 2014, every year in November, with the benefits of a trade show, a new trade show. What it means an opportunity for brand awareness boosts, for new sales and customer loyalty uplift. An event up with the times that allows the entire community of international buyers to take part live, I hope more of them live, or online in physical and virtual B2B meetings, master classes, and guided testing to reach the market from the East and the West. I would like to take this opportunity, talking to you today, to anticipate that the Italian embassies in Tokyo and in Tokyo, Japan, and Washington, US, will host some of our B2B testings during wine-to-wine. With the wine industry spinning in certain times, there is an additional pressure for brands to stand out. The upcoming wine-to-wine exhibition and forum and the path leading to them are the right, I think, the right tools to meet this goal. The conversation we are having today is part of a series of events about the state of art of wine business world. This is the second webinar organized in 2 weeks by Vinitaly Wine to Wine, focusing on the US market. As you know, the American is a mature market and the world's leading importer for Italian wines, where average consumers are aware of the quality and diversity of Italian wines. In the first half of the year, despite the difficulties caused by COVID-19, export of Italian wine posted almost $1 billion, plus 1.8%, with a slight increase in volumes, plus 2.9%, compared to the same period 2019. Bruce Sanderson, last year at Wine to Wine, illustrated the results of an online survey conducted among wine Spectator readers about wine consumption in the United States, with a focus on Italian wine. Highlights of the survey include the primacy of Italy as the favorite among all the world regions, 59%, about 59%. So thank you to all the speakers attending today for debating with us the post-pandemic scenario. And a special thanks to the companies and everyone who will listen to contribute to the discussion. Well, now I turn it over to Mr. Colangelo, who will be with us throughout this conversation. See you, I hope personally, for every one of you, at the Wine to Wine exhibition and forum next November. Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Mantovani. And thank you for the opportunity to speak today. We appreciate the wineries and the wine marketing attendees of the webinar listening in, taking time. This is harvest for many, we know. So we appreciate the audience today. The US is in a very interesting place regarding the wine business, particularly for Italian wine. We cannot know the future of COVID, how long the pandemic will last, when events, physical events will be able to come back. But we do know there are many, many things we can be doing to promote, to build brands, and to sell wine in the US. The wine business in the US is very resilient, surprisingly strong since COVID. Wine volumes are up 4%. I'm just going to give a few facts to set the terms of today's discussion before we turn over to our very distinguished panel. The average bottle price in the US is $11.38 since the pandemic started. That's an increase of 5%. So people are buying better wines. The fastest growing category is $15 plus. That's a very positive indication for Italian wines. Something not as positive, the largest wineries are taking more market share, as well as the very boutique wineries. So wine companies in the middle, wine brands in the middle need to compete harder. Retail sales, as we expect, are way up. Direct to consumer is up, e-commerce is up, restaurant business is down, and we don't know when fine dining will come back. It will come back slowly, and it may have changed forever. I think one of the key takeaways from today will be that there's no return to normal. This is a quote from the Wine Industry Financial Symposium, that existing trends in the US wine business are accelerated by COVID, but many of those trends already existed. That's from Credit Suisse. According to Nielsen, consumers are settling into this next normal. So the behavior we're seeing now from consumers will stick post-COVID to some degree. We, of course, can't know exactly by how much. We know that off-premise and direct-to-consumer will continue to drive the market for the foreseeable future. And here's a quote from Danny Brager of Nielsen, or recently of Nielsen. Quote, "It's never been more important to understand market performance and consumer behavior and target your opportunities than it is today." So the panel we have here today have a lot of wisdom and knowledge and experience to impart about how to understand consumers, how to engage consumers, how to engage trade, retail trade, restaurant trade, and how to continue to be successful in the US during and post-COVID. The market for Italian wine is strong. Italy has been lucky regarding tariffs, at least to date. which has given Italy a competitive advantage ahead of Spain and France and Germany. But what can you do to continue to build your brands and sell your wines during COVID, post-COVID? So I'm going to open up today's topics. Let's see here if I can figure out how to share my screen. Okay, so first, today's speakers. Kristina Kelley, Senior Director of Corporate Public Relations and Wine and Spirits Media Relations, EJ Gallo Winery. Kristina has spoken at Wine to Wine. She is a leader in the business of wine communications in the United States. Aaron Sherman, who is the CEO and founder of SevenFifty. SevenFifty has revolutionized how distributors post their portfolios, how restaurant and retail customers buy wine. SevenFifty has also a media company, and we'll be talking a lot about the convergence of media and commerce in today's discussion. Heini Zachariassien, the founder and chief executive officer of Vivino, the largest wine app in the world, and very, very influential in the United States as well as Italy. Michael Osborn, founder and executive vice president of Wine.com, the largest online retailer and the largest wine store in America and maybe the world. Mike will clarify that for us. And Alison Napjus, senior editor, Wine Spectator. I'm sure Alison needs no introduction. You've all probably sent her a lot of emails and hoped to have her taste your wines and visit your estates, but we're very happy that Alison was able to join us today. This is an incredible panel. This is a unique and rare opportunity to get the thought leaders and the industry movers and shakers together in one conversation. I'm incredibly honored to chair this panel, and just want to show today's topics. So we'll be covering the convergence of commerce and communication. So you have the opportunity to sell your wine, build your brand, and communicate to your audiences, trade and consumer, on the same platforms now in many cases. E-commerce companies are in the communications business, whether that's Wine.com with its content, or Vivino, or SevenFifty with content for the trade. And communications companies are in the e-commerce business. Wine Spectator has always been in the event business, but many media companies are also building out opportunities where you can actually purchase product, purchase wine through their platforms. This is revolutionary in the media business. There's a loosening of the three-tier system, relaxing of certain interstate shipping laws, ability for Italian winemakers, European winemakers to actually build platforms to communicate directly to American consumers and sell wine directly to American consumers. There's more interstate shipping. There's more at-home delivery. Restaurants are now able to sell wine from where they couldn't sell bottles of wine that they couldn't before. People could buy cocktails at home. This is a trend that was happening before COVID, but is accelerating greatly. There are many new opportunities for connecting to your audiences, both trade audiences and consumer audiences. Lots of platforms, lots of technologies to facilitate this kind of communications and selling opportunities. And very importantly, event strategies are changing, have changed. Alison can speak a lot to that with Wine Spectator, with their iconic events, Wine Experience, the Wine Spectator Grand Tour, how things are changing and how money is being reallocated in different promotional strategies from physical events. So those are the topics for today. And I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Kristina Kelley. Again, Kristina is with Gallo. Gallo is the leading wine company in the US, a producer, a marketer, and a brand builder. And Gallo needs no further introduction, nor does Kristina. Kristina?
All right, thank you. Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Gino, I really wanted to thank you for including me today in this panel. I'm fortunate enough to have been to Verona a number of times and have spoken at Veronafiere. So also to Mr. Mantovani, please wanted to extend my thanks as well. So I oversee the communications part of our organization, very focused on public relations, trade events, trade media, as well as our editorial content. So my conversation today will be very much focused on how you might want to rethink communicating your brand to the US audience. I think it's really important to know that we're still very much in the COVID world. You should know that we're still working remotely. We're working from home. If we go into restaurants, it's outside or 25% capacity inside. And so the pandemic has caused shifts in our behavior in the United States, the way we think, the way we feel, and attitudes. And this impacts our daily life, and it impacts the way we engage with our friends, our family, our colleagues, and with wine. So there exists a need to change our communication approach to connect and engage with new consumers to the wine category, existing consumers, by really sharing and creating compelling stories and content. Our organization is fortunate enough to represent a number of phenomenal wineries within Italy, everywhere from Allegrini to Parapen to Renato Ratti to Argiano, Sherman, Tornatori, as well as Brancaia and La Marca as well. So Italy has something that means a lot to the United States. Italy has people, they have stories, they have narratives that people want to share. And I think in communication, people and stories make a difference. We have a feeling, and we say in the United States, we are experiencing social isolation. We're not going to bars. You know, we're in a lot of cases, we're not even going to big family gatherings. So we are experiencing social isolation. And so we're moving to entertaining ourselves at home. We're moving to learning and experiencing through digital, because anybody who has an iPad, an iPhone, a laptop can tune into hearing about the world-class offerings from the people who know wine the best, and that is many of you listening in on this call. The rise of social media platforms like Instagram Live can really highlight people, can highlight wine, culture, stories, and can really support your brand messaging and your objectives. And these are just some images of some of the things that we've done over the course of the year, everything from virtual happy hours to Instagram Lives with the Wine Spectator to doing trade events virtually. And so we're going to speak a little bit about this and just share some best practices as we see it. Digital is the new normal for media tours, for trade events. And so I highlighted some things we've done over the past 6 or 7 months. Anywhere from hosting a trade event with Pietro Ratti, and we brought in some other experts, such as Dylan Proctor, who you may know from SOM, to come and speak about pursuing elegance in Barolo. And so we've had an opportunity to bring in other speakers. We'll be doing something later this month with Elaine Brown as we explore the wineries in Napa Valley. And in all of these, we're bringing a new approach. We're bringing video, we're bringing images, we're bringing in experiences, whether it be food, whether it be a discount offer for somebody to purchase our wines through e-commerce or through our websites. And so when we think about virtual, don't just think of virtual as we think about media. There's opportunities for customers. There's opportunities for wine clubs. There's opportunities for restaurants who are doing something for their customers who maybe will experiencing that meal, that bottle of wine in their home. There is a silver lining as we think about pivoting to virtual events. More consumers can experience your brand. And I wanted to highlight something we did this Saturday with La Marca in conjunction with a virtual conference with Every Girl. And it was really about empowerment of women, career opportunities. Last year, we did this conference in person. We were in Chicago, we were in Atlanta for 100 people. This year, we did it virtually, And we were able to have over 1,000 attendees. So when we think about the fact that we can't taste in person, we can't experience in person, being able to pivot to virtual allows you to reach a much broader group of consumers and have a much more engaging experience. The other thing that I think is very important is to look for partnerships where you can link to commerce. So I used in a couple examples in here, one from Vivino, when we had a series with a virtual tasting with Karen McNeil, and then the people who participate were able to go over to Vivino, and they were able to purchase the wine to taste along that seminar. Many of you are familiar with Food and Wine Classic in Aspen. This year, it pivoted to the Food and Wine Classic at home. And we were able to work with the journalists who had a seminar. This one was Summer Sippers Smackdown, and it was with Anthony Giglio. And they partnered with wine.com. So someone could go and purchase these 3 wines that were part of that seminar, have the wines shipped to them through a third party. In this case, it was wine.com, and were able to participate in the seminar. So some interesting ways to think about events you might do and how you might want to link back to e-commerce sites. And then we're also looking at partnerships with something like Corvin, where we developed a partnership where we were able to have our wines be part of a new program that they were developing. And this view that we have of the Allegrini Amarone was almost 72,000 views, and we were able to be part of their master classes and incorporate our wines. So looking for those partnerships, looking for opportunities to link back to commerce, I think are all important as you think about your business in 2020 and 2021. And just some key learns before we move on to our other panelists is that you really need to set for anything you do in the virtual or digital space. You have to set your objectives. What is the role of the activity? Is it brand building? Is you growing consumer awareness? Are you using virtual and experiential opportunities to educate trade or sales? You have to be very clear about the theme, the focus. You need to have compelling messaging, compelling stories. And that's something Italy does so well. I encourage you, when you have something that you're doing virtually, to have a moderator, such as we have Gino Colangelo today. It really helps make the experience more credible and dynamic. And just like we did for this seminar this morning, we got together and we prepared. We had our meeting and we rehearsed, so we were all ready. And then bringing in those other elements, people, food, chefs, things that make it engaging for the US market. This leads to more discussion and gives your guests a more engaging experience. So you can partner with a restaurateur, you can partner if you have a culinary program to bring that to the United States. And like everything, images, videos really help showcase your key messaging points visually. And my last piece to leave you with is when we think about our digital or our virtual events, don't forget to measure your results. How many people attended? What were the comments? Were there engagements? Did people view the event? Did they click to your website? Did they click to an e-commerce site such as Vivino or wine.com? And did it result in sales? So that is what I wanted to share with you, and I'm looking forward to your questions and looking forward to hearing the rest of the panelists today.
Thanks very much, Kristina. That's really helpful. And I believe people can get your presentation if they request, and we can take care of that detail later.
I will send it to you to share. Yes.
Great, thank you. Our second speaker today is Aaron Sherman of 750. 750, just by numbers, lists over 300 distributor profiles, has over 12,000 restaurant and retail buyers on its network, over 5 million marketplace searches. It's the #1 marketplace for retail restaurant buyers in the United States. And it's also a media company, very importantly. 750 creates great long-form content, has great staff of writers. This is the future, and Aaron, please take it away.
All right, thanks so much, Gino. Ciao tutti. As a former sommelier, Italian wine was actually my introduction to learning about wine. So it's a great privilege to present here today. 750 was started just about 10 years ago with the goal of powering a connected 3-tier system in the US using modern technology and data. And at the center of the platform is a marketplace, kind of first of its kind marketplace that connects alcohol distributors in the US with their customers in on and off premise retail. And on top of the data that's created in the platform, we also offer software solutions for brands, importers, to reach all parts of the supply chain in the US, and a consumer-facing platform for wine shops and liquor stores to be able to sell online. So just a little detail about who we are by the numbers. Like Gino mentioned, we work with around 1,000 distributors across the US, over 120,000 restaurants, retail shops use the platform. And those buyers, in their efforts to understand what is available to them into the market and to educate themselves about the brands in the US and to get access to those stories and that content, execute around 50 million searches on the site over the last year, and will place in the neighborhood of $1 billion of orders through the platform to their wholesalers this year. So Gino asked that we share a little bit of the insight that we can pull from some of that purchasing data specifically, and whether there's any detail or insight to be gleaned from the way that retailers are purchasing from their wholesalers. So the first thing to note here for our data set is that our audience here is primarily independent on and off-premise retail buyers, so non-chain. And as you can see, post-COVID, there's been a meaningful acceleration of the adoption of online ordering tools. And this is coming as retailers need to find an efficient way to place their orders and to get the information about products in the market because they have not had the opportunity, obviously, to meet in person with their sales reps at distributors the way they had in the past. Similarly, distributor salespeople are adopting digital tools, such as some of the tools that are available to them on 750, to make digital proposals, use content provided by brands, and share that information digitally in order to convert a digital sale, essentially using a digital order form. So the first interesting insight here probably comes as no surprise, but in March, when the US locked down in the middle of the month, we saw a rapid decrease in the number of orders that were happening from the on-premise, from restaurants and bars, and a massive increase in the number of orders that were coming from the off-premise, wine shops and liquor stores. That has now begun to level out as we have moved through the pandemic, but obviously this is something that is unfolding in real time. The on-premise has still not by any means recovered entirely. And as we head into cold weather, we may see a decline again. An interesting insight here, though, is that while through this period, on-premise has been placing fewer orders, those that are continuing to stay open and order are generally placing orders of around the same volume and the same size of orders. The off-premise, however, has seen an uptick, around 15% increase in March, that has generally continued even as the on-premise has begun to come online. And part of this, as we've dug in some more detail, is driven by retailers buying deeper on a smaller number of SKUs. So while they aren't placing as many orders as they were at the height of the pandemic, they are buying larger quantities of the SKUs that they are merchandising. If we look at average bottle price by channel, you'll see that there was a decline here around the time that COVID hit, but not as dramatic as one might expect. So the average bottle price being purchased for both on-premise and off-premise did go down, but it has begun to recover. And here alongside, just to have a comparison, we have the average bottle price for Italian wines in both the on-premise and the off-premise. You can see that for the most part, this has remained in sync with the rest of the market, though on-premise, it looks as though Italy still has a little bit of room for recovery. On the bright side though, when we look at market share across a handful of major wine producing regions, you'll see that Italy has maintained market share throughout this period with very little impact. So although the number of orders and the volume of ordering has shifted between on and off premise, the share that Italy has maintained throughout this period has remained fairly constant. So, looking at the trade specifically, what are ways and opportunities for staying connected? We offer a unique suite of tools that do touch all parts of the US supply chain. So distributors use the platform in order to publish their portfolios and get access to online ordering from their customers. But there are also 35,000 salespeople from distributors that use SevenFifty and the content available there for creating proposals and communicating with their customers. Retailers use SevenFifty similarly to do research, understand what is in their market, and go deeper into the stories. And similar with our B2C platform for wine shops and liquor stores, allowing them to sell to consumers with white label sites, that same content can now reach the consumer. And so as a brand or an importer, there's a unique opportunity, as Kristina was touching on, to hone in the storytelling, understand exactly how you want your brand, your products to be communicated throughout the supply chain in the US. And we offer a suite of tools that allow you to touch all parts of that chain through one central touch point. And again, leaning into storytelling and thinking how commerce can convert, content can convert into commerce. Our publication SevenFifty Daily reaches 300,000 trade professionals in the US, and there are opportunities there to craft stories that can then be pushed into the marketplace, again, ensuring that all the stakeholders, whether it's the retail buyers or the distributor reps that are selling your products, have the version of your story that will communicate who you are and what your brand is, and then help drive that to the point of purchasing online. So I look forward to the other presenters and any questions that you have later. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Aaron. That was incredibly insightful. Thank you. Our next speaker is Heini Zachariassien of Vivino. So Vivino is the world's largest consumer online marketplace and the most downloaded wine app in the world. And I know it's quite popular also in Italy. So Heini, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Gino, and thank you very much for having me. I obviously wish that we were, all in Italy now instead of our own offices around the world, but that was not to be. I was at the Wine to Wine last year, and it was amazing. Definitely want to go again. Not planning this year, but later for sure. Let me give you a quick refresher on what Vivino is here. We have around 46 million users around the world. By far the biggest, wine app in the world, but also the biggest wine community in the world. And 20,000 people install Vivino every single day. So all organic. We don't do a lot of marketing. It's people that, just love the product and start using the product. The commercial side of the business has been doing really, really well. Even before COVID, we did well, but now it's looking incredibly strong. We basically have 100% growth in our revenue every single year. Just to give you an idea about what that means, in 2019, we sold wine for $130 million. And this year, we're looking at around $250 million in wine sales on the platform. So very, very exciting times for us. I think things are really, really changing in the online space, around the world. The US market is the biggest for us, actually by far. It's the biggest country in users, and it's the biggest in revenue too. One thing that's also, we shouldn't forget that there's still a lot of opportunity to improve the supply on Vivino. It's still only between 15 and 20%. Every time we show a wine, there's actually a buy button that you can buy. So supply is still a challenge for us and a lot of people in the industry. We'd love to have all these wines on Vivino. So there's some work to be done there. And basically our vision is to be the most trusted resource for wine buying anywhere in the world. We really want to be the place you go to. Whenever you think about buying a wine, we want to be that trusted resource. And if we look at what we've built over the past years, basically we started out by building demand. We started 10 years ago by building this app, which now almost 50 million people use around the world. And we have the best data about wine. There's nobody else in the world that has gathered so much data about wine, which means everything from ratings to taste to prices, all that combined. By 2015-16, we started really building supply. And in the end now, we really start selling quite a lot of wine, based on all the data that we have. Let's get into COVID a little bit here and see what happened. I'm sure you've read some of the stories here, but things started going a little bit crazy as soon as COVID started. I know that Mike is going to talk about this too. Aaron talked about it already, but demand for wine, specifically online, people were drinking a little bit more, but online just really, really rocketed, both for us and a lot of other people. I want to show you this one here first, just to give you an idea. So this goes back all the way to September of 19. It's basically how many new buyers we get in every single day. And it's been pretty steady, like 500 people buy for the first time ever on Vivino. But then you can see Black Friday over there, almost 5,000 people joined, special offers. But other than that, pretty stable until we reach March of 2020. Then things start really rocketing up. And this is people for the first time ever to buy on Vivino, and we reach numbers like 2,000 new buyers every single day. You see a big peak there of 9,500. That was not any kind of virus. That was actually Post Malone launching his rosé. We got 10,000 people in buying his rosé. So a lot of fans of Post Malone out there. But anyway, the point with this one really is that the change, sure, we went down again, but we're not at the 500 new buyers. We're more at 700, 800, 1,000 new buyers every day. So we're still getting a lot more new buyers than we did before. So there's definitely a shift that we see as much more long-term than we thought in the beginning. I want to go through a little bit more numbers here. I love numbers, so let's go through it here. But if we look at the peak of COVID, April, May, and June, our annual growth in those months was 157%, 137%, and 140%. So we more than doubled our revenue all of those 3 months. So incredible growth there. July, it sort of came down again. We're still at 114%. And the key thing, we basically look at two numbers here when we look at how this is developing. We look at how many new buyers come in, and then we look at the retention, like how many of them keep coming back. And the funny thing here, and this is where the shift is, this was not something they tried once. Our 30-day and 60-day retention kept going. So they kept coming back to us. So I think that was very, very interesting. Another observation we did, which is different from Italy to the US, is that Italian buyers actually didn't come back in the same way. They bought a lot online during the height of the COVID, but the Americans stayed. So that was a difference, and it varies from market to market, but quite an interesting observation that in the US, people kept buying online, but in Italy, they sort of went back to normal. I think that was really quite interesting too. If you look at the big categories for us in the US, Tuscan Red, Amarone, and Brunello, I think no surprises there. But also interesting that in the US, if we look at 4.5 and 5-star ratings, the Americans are the ones that do a 4.5 and 5-star rating more than anyone else in the world for Italian wines. So even Italians don't rate Italian wine as high as the Americans do. So that's quite interesting. The last point I want to make here is also that the average price that Americans pay for Italian wine was $28. And again, we talked about a little bit lower price points for Aaron. Obviously, Aaron has a lot of retail. We're only online, and sometimes the price points there are a little bit higher. But the US is the highest in the world except for Hong Kong, Singapore, and Canada. So $28 is quite a high number there. So briefly on how do we see the future here for this? We really think that this was a push. The users needed a push to try online. And we think that these are long-term habits. We're not saying that COVID is over, but people are getting into the habit of buying online. And buying one online sort of becomes the new normal. And I think, I'm sure Michael from Wine.com is also going to say this, that we really think buying wine online has reached a tipping point. And I think that's important for the industry, wine industry anywhere in the world, and Italy obviously, is that you can't have a producer without an online strategy. It just isn't possible. You have to have some kind of online strategy or else you're just losing out. Even a year ago, maybe online was too small. I'm sorry, but that is over now. You have to have an online strategy. Another thing that's happening that's relevant in the US is that there is a chance they start changing the law. The 3-tier system that we had for 100 years hasn't changed that much, but there is a chance when these things happen that, you know, things could change and there's a push to change the laws. We've seen a tiny bit of it. They've allowed restaurants to sell wine and so on. So things have changed, and this could be an occasion for people to change that. Well, I'm an optimist, so we'll see about that. On the threats form, you know, obviously economic recession is going to be a challenge here. If we go into a full-blown recession now, that is going to be a challenge for all of us. We have to be aware of that. And fulfillment has been a challenge during this period, but that's also getting better now. Another reason why online worked so well, specifically in the US, was that when in a lot of places in the US, I think almost every state, you have to sign to receive alcohol. And obviously everyone was at home, so that wasn't a big problem. So when we go back to non-shelter at home, then that is going to change too. Finally, you know, when it comes to working with us, you know, you should really work with people that are on the Vivino platform. We have 800 merchants on the platform all over the world. And we do campaigns, all those things for our users. And the key for us is that everything we do is very personalized. Everything is based on data, which means that we can find a user for any wine in the world. So that's the difference. We're very, very data-driven, and even smaller producers can really sell on Vivino if they make amazing wine, and obviously they do a lot of that in Italy. With that, that's a short introduction. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Heine. That was really insightful, really interesting, and I think it leads really well into our next presentation by Michael Osborn of Wine.com. So Michael, please.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me today. This is it's quite a pleasure to join you, and I will probably echo much of what Heini and Aaron had shared, and even Kristina of Gallo, given the experiences and opportunities. I would like to share a presentation. I think I can do this swiftly and perhaps have you follow along with just a couple of notes. Is that one moment while I get my screen share done? Apologize. You know, very quickly on this, the history since, you know, obviously the COVID-19, you know, considerations. I was actually with James Suckling on a tour with Italian wineries up until the middle of that second week of March. And when I returned to San Francisco just 2 days later, we were under shelter-in-place orders. I would tell you that we were this experience of responding to dramatic growth is something that we are accustomed to because of the Christmas holiday season, which always has growth rates of in our business of 300% and 400% week over week. So we were accustomed to that amount of growth in handling demand, and having had now 22 years of dress rehearsals for Christmas. But of course, we were caught off guard. We were not prepared on March 15th. But immediately, our human resources department went into full action and rehired in a lot of the operations and customer service teams that we had during the December timeframe. And that is, we rehired almost 500, a little more than 500 people into our 6 logistics centers. We obviously needed to do so running multiple shifts to be socially distanced and clean in the environment. So it's not like it was a year ago. And at the same time, our marketing team didn't stand down and just expect that consumers would discover a better way to buy wine, but we tripled our marketing investment in this second quarter of this year in order to let the word get out about wine online. I think it's important to echo what Heini said about the fact that we learned pretty early on that customer awareness was very low, that it was legal even to purchase wine in the US online. It turned out that many consumers just never had tried. So what we've experienced here is, I'll call it trial. That would be that first order where a consumer says, boy, I do enjoy finding an assortment of wine, information and knowledge transfer about the wine, and obviously competitive prices, and delivered to their home, like a better way to buy wine. Very quickly, we took the effort to survey our new customers who joined us since March 15th, and found that before the COVID-19 pandemic, they would answer the question of whether they would sometimes, mostly, or always buy wine online. It was limited to 24% of the respondents. Whereas asked the question, how many are going to do it continuously during the virus and afterwards? We have high survey results of 86 and 88%. 88% of new consumers say they would continue post-COVID. We haven't seen the end of that. So our business in this period of time has a little more than grown a little more than 250% during the virus. We're expecting, to give you some idea of our size, today we're $275 million business trailing 12 months through August. And while we're privately held, I find it interesting to make sure our suppliers have information about the growth and how to work with us. Just for some background sake, we are retailers, licensed retailers, and I'll give you a description of those states where we operate in and who we service in a moment. But our mission from day one was to inspire the wine lifestyle through innovation. The innovation part is the fact that we have as many engineers employed as we do merchants, as we do our team in finance or marketing. Engineering is very important to us. We have the second most popular app on the in the App Store, tipping my hat to Vivino, where we also participate as one of Heini's merchants in the marketplace. Our job is to really help consumers discover the world of wine and do it with confidence. And we do it through a large selection, through guidance and convenience that simply can't be found in stores. As we call it, a better way to buy wine. Our assortment is large. In our biggest markets of New York and California, we offer more than 15,000 wines at a time. And that means over a course of a year, our count is nearly 50,000 wines. In certain states, we're also offering artisanal spirits as well. Our average bottle price is about threefold the nation's average. And that's because, again, we offer a wide range of products and have price points and regions. The pain point we're solving is this pain point. If you've walked into a common retailer in the US, it's a wall of wine with as little information as can be gleaned from that front label and perhaps the back label as you turn the bottle around. That's not good enough. What we do, online, of course, and leverage your great material is publish your winemaker notes, your family pictures, your videos, and also if the winery is open to the public or it has a real winery, you know, present, where a cellar door or tasting room, why you can click on it and go directly to Google Earth to see, even discover more. So guidance is a big part of the business. So is getting help from live chat sommeliers. Up until mid-March, we've taken far more than 1 million chats now, but through March, in the 6 years that we had launched our live chat somms being available 7 days a week, we'd taken more than 1 million interactions. So unlike a lot of e-commerce companies who want to hide their toll-free telephone number, or hide behind just make it all self-service, we find that good things happen when we talk to our customers. The national footprint, because many of you might ask how you can do business with our company, and it really does start with understanding that we're a licensed retailer of wine in 6 states. They also include, not on this picture here, Boston, Massachusetts, and New Jersey. Our largest distribution centers are in New York, in California, Miami, and Houston. It's these 6 centers that give us access to 42 states and Washington, D.C. It is your importers who sell wine to wholesalers who sell wine to us. Again, back to the 3-tier model that Heini had referenced as well, and Aaron is involved in supporting with SevenFifty. We are customers of wholesalers. We are not competitors to wholesalers. We are retailers. So we compete with other retail models like grocery stores, fine wine stores, restaurants, and the like for the wine. I just think it's important also to understand kind of the lanes of traffic and the varying degrees of inventory that are required from each tier. This is an example of what might look a whole lot like one of your wineries, where you are in barrels, and then when you bottle it, you want to send that ahead to your importers in pallets of cases. And this is what your wholesalers look like. They would certainly be stocking pallets of wine, in many cases, in this example, in automated warehouses. I'll show you a picture of our warehouse in Berkeley, California. It is filled with bottles of wine. Sure, we have some case stacks and we have some pallet racking, but the majority of the wines that we're selling are in bottles, and we're allowing consumers to buy 1 bottle at a time. And typically they don't. They buy 1 bottle of each of maybe a dozen different wines. That would be quite typical. So I just want to point out the inventory dynamics of our business highly leverages your wholesalers. A little bit about the numbers. Again, wine only, trailing 12 months through August, almost 50,000 unique vintage specific wines were purchased by customers at an average selling price in this trailing 12 months of $27. That's depressed a bit from 30 a year ago. That's the result of more volume. Again, $275 million of wine now versus $165 million a year prior, and more volume and more daily purchasing. You could say now that under shelter and place orders. But we don't stop there. We offer nearly every varietal called out separately, every country and region of the world, from A to Z. We don't have a Z, I guess, but Yountville, Abruzzo de Yountville, California. And 100% of what we do are brands. No private labels, no control labels. I always say I'd be a lousy winemaker, and why compete with all you talented people? So we don't do that part of the business. Something else that's quite different with wine.com versus the rest of the US is the fact that we are customers prefer to buy imported wine over domestic wine. And this has been the case for nearly 22 years. Every year we've been in business, it's always been tipped to imports. Just a titch, but still tipped. And obviously France and Italy dominate this. And this is the chart, shows you the amount of wine that is that our customers prefer from Italy and its annualized growth rate. So while we have had growth rate, Italy is since March 15th is up 240% over the same year prior, okay, from COVID-19 tailwinds, if you will, of Italian wine. But for the full year, you're growing 53%, which is, again, a fabulous growth rate, only found by a couple of other regions. Consumers that are making a difference in our business this year are primarily the youngest consumers. I'm giving you an example of our consumer base a year ago versus this year to date. And that's in to tell you that 37% of our customers are Gen Z or millennials. The next chunk is Gen X. This is the very narrow band from 1964 to 1976. And baby boomers make up a third of our business, or 30% of our business. Most interesting, new customers. Of new customers that have first made a purchase from wine.com since March 15th, 44% of them are millennials, 44%. So it's a beautiful place for growth. I want to end with a couple of comments for you. One is that if you're looking at our website and wondering about how your company can play a role, your winery can play a role, or you see information that is not up to par with your current images, winemaker descriptions, or notes, we have a mailbox that's content@wine.com. That is the best address to get support of updating your images. We expect that from our suppliers. Lastly, I wanted to end on just the fact that how we found ourselves here. I mentioned to you, I was with James on the road. We had done it, actually a number of Italian events this year, including the Barolo and Barbaresco World Release in New York with Gino Colangelo and his marketing prowess. And then a couple of weeks later, I was back in New York for the Suckling Wine Tour. We knew that live tastings were going to be paused. And by the end of April, we had started a series that now we've completed 37 live streamed events with over 85,000 consumers attending. And we've had some great events with celebrities like from Italy, Mary J. Blige joined Marco Fantinelli with his a release of wines she calls Sun Goddess from Italy, is an example. We've had the Antinori family on as well, but we've also had some celebrities that own wineries like Francis Ford Coppola and John Bon Jovi and his son Jesse. John Legend appeared. So there's been a combination of big events with 5,000 participants and small events with several hundred participants. But the difference here, and I think that Kristina touched on this early on, is that what we discovered were consumers are really interested in getting that selection of wine in their hands prior to the show. And if you give them an opportunity to do so, they will taste along. I would think it would be very boring to watch a winemaker just talk poetically about their property, maybe show a picture or two, but just conversation. It's so much more enjoyable when it's interactive, meaning I've got the bottle open. Just tomorrow night, we are going to be joined by three, and we call them Brunello superstars, but Lamberto Frescobaldi, Alessandra will join us from Capranzo, and I'm really excited to have Bernardino join us from Argiano Winery. This is tomorrow night, and again, the consumer value here is they can buy the wine ahead of time, open it up during the event, and have a chance in just 45 minutes to be transported from their dining room or living room to Brunello and Montalcino, that is, and enjoy your wines. I think there's a whole lot more of this to come, and that we haven't seen the end of live stream tastings as a revolutionary way to get consumers to enjoy the experience that they otherwise would have only if they bought an airline ticket and were permitted to travel. In closing, I just want to say that while we're the oftentimes called the granddaddy of the websites, and having been in this business since 1998 as a pure play e-commerce site, this business is a startup, and we run the business like it's a startup every day. And our team is really enthusiastic to continue the growth and to serve our suppliers and our consumers alike. So thank you for the chance to share with you.
Thanks very much, Mike. That was fantastic. And this is such a well-rounded conversation. And what better way to put sort of a bow on such a great conversation about where Italian wine is in the US today than with Alison Napjus of Wine Spectator. So please, Alison.
Thank you, Gino. And lots of interesting comments from my fellow panelists, and a lot of what I will touch on kind of comes back to some of these points. But I should start by saying, as a wine journalist, what I do every single time I write an article is think about what the consumer wants to learn, what they'd be interested in, and how to present it to them in a clear and concise way. And I think as winery owners and as marketers, this is really the main focus that you need right now during these challenging times, is adjusting your perspective. So there's kind of two overarching points I wanted to talk about: understanding the mind of wine lovers during COVID and engaging with wine lovers. And I think that we are all wine lovers, so we can immediately start thinking about how are we enjoying wine, how are we learning about it, and how do we keep following our passion for it and try to apply that to some of the consumers out there. But to gain a broader perspective, I took a look at winespectator.com. Our magazine's website has about 500,000 views every week, usually. But what we saw recently in the last 5 to 6 months is that we've had an increase of about 12% ongoing. So people are coming to the website more often. And I think that everybody here who has an online platform would also say the same. We're all sitting at home, going on our computers and looking up information. And overall, looking at the different parts of the website that are performing, it's that people want to stay connected and they want to stay informed. So, for example, traffic to the Wine IQ section of our website, Wine 101, has increased by about 15%. And views of our video content is up about 5%, particularly with rises for our staying home drink and recipe content, how-to videos, and the ABCs of wine. And not surprisingly, we've seen a lot of interest in recipes and wine pairings, with that rising about 30% over the last 6 months versus last year. At a more basic level, we also have a dramatic interest in kind of basic wine info. So things like wine storage, wine buying strategies, can I open a bottle of wine and drink it the next day or the next week? And my personal favorite, how many calories are in a glass of wine? Visits to this webpage have increased more than 1,000% in the last 6 months. So people are going online to learn about wine, to find more information, and they're clearly still enjoying wine a lot. Separate from our website, there's been some reference in April. We started a live chat series on Instagram called Straight Talk. We do this twice a week with different wine industry personalities, either winemakers, owners, retailers, restaurateurs. And every interview is getting between 10 or 15,000 visits and views. So again, that's people finding their way to wine content and wanting to engage with it. So thinking about this, the next thing to try and understand is how can you as a winery or a marketer engage with these consumers? And I think the really first thing is a basic thing. Think about the message that you're sending. Signore Mantovani mentioned earlier the survey that we presented last year at Vin Italy about Italian wines and American wine consumers. And this was 2019, but I'm sure the numbers are the same. Brunello di Montalcino and Barolo are their favorite Italian wines. So Americans know Brunello and Sangiovese, they know Barolo and Nebbiolo, and for white wine, they know Pinot Grigio. But there are very few Americans who can talk with any sort of authority about the hundreds of native varieties, the many docks, the IGTs, and these small Italian wine areas. So you need to be able to craft your message in a way that will allow American wine consumers to understand the wine using references that are familiar to them. So for example, if you're a producer in Morellino di Scanzano, this might mean talking first about Tuscany or talking about Sangiovese, instead of dialing right into the small area of Scanzano. Or if you're a producer of Greco di Tufo in Campania, you might connect the grape variety to the crisp character and the stone fruit flavors of Pinot Grigio, so that an American can start to draw some parallels there. Personally, I love the complexity and diversity of Italian wine, but the idea right now is to simplify the message and to grab the attention of the average American consumer by playing to your broader strengths. And the second bigger project is to innovate on the messages delivery. And all of my fellow panelists have talked about some of the great ways that they're already doing this. As Gino mentioned, at Wine Spectator, we hold a number of walk-around tasting events. We canceled our spring events. We canceled our biggest event of the year, the Wine Experience, which would have taken place in just 2 weeks. We are still holding out hope for December events, which have been rescheduled from April. But of course, it's a question mark. And I think during these times of social distancing, in-person tastings it's going to be a while before they're a regular occurrence again. So I think if you want to start a relationship with a consumer, the live stream tastings that we've been talking about, or virtual tastings, are a great thing to consider at this time. At a basic level, you can announce that on a platform, whether it's Instagram, a Zoom webinar like this, or something else, that you're going to have somebody speaking about the winery, invite attendees to pour a glass and listen in and enjoy. And particularly if you can save this content and use it on your website or keep it in Instagram TV, this is kind of an evergreen introduction to your winery that people can keep going back to. And then we can take it to another level. And as Michael was talking about, deliver the wines to the people, to the consumers before the tasting event. And I think that this is something that's really people can connect to. It's the closest experience that they'll have to that walk around tasting, but it's also something that we can maintain during COVID. However, I think there are some challenges with these. I've attended several virtual tastings at this point, and I've seen some really great ones and I've seen some not so great ones. One point to remember is that it's basically a performance, and you need to find a performer to host this virtual tasting. So that means that sometimes the winemaker, your winemaker, who's a wonderful person but very quiet and reserved, may not be the best focal point for a virtual tasting. They're the most knowledgeable, but maybe that information needs to be transferred to somebody else who can be more lively and make more impact, or to bring in somebody who can be a moderator for that winemaker and keep the virtual tasting going, keep it interesting, keep people engaged. I think we all remember the days of being in the classroom where you had the teacher who talks and more information, and very quickly everyone's face is like this and nobody's listening. This is only heightened in the virtual experience. People very quickly can tune out. So it's important to remember that less is more. You need to focus on what the most important points are, what the story and messages that you want to get across, and you need to present it in a lively and concise way. To that point, I would also say that most non-professional tasters, consumers, cannot taste more than 2 or 3 wines at a time before you're going to lose their attention for other reasons, let's say. So if you're a winery that makes 5 or 10 or 20 different wines, you want to think about what are the 2 or 3 wines that really speak to the heart of your winery, to the core of what you do. And you want to focus on those wines. So wines that tell the message of your winery along with the words that you're going to support them. As I mentioned, as a journalist, this is kind of what I'm thinking about all the time. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity to continue exploring wine with wine lovers around the world in a virtual way. We are certainly at Wine Spectator. We have been changing our coverage to try and address for this, and have had a lot of fun with it and a lot of success doing these live chats, doing videos that we're shooting in our own homes. And I think that people actually like to engage with each other in a way that's not quite as formal. So I think we'll continue to see innovation around this. And I hope that some of these comments, along with all the great information from my fellow panelists, will help us all to continue telling the story of Italian wine.
Thanks, Amelia and Alison and all the panelists. I think we've had quite a great, well-rounded discussion. We do have a lot of questions. A lot of people are asking about the availability of the presentations and a recording of the webinar itself. I believe the webinar has been recorded and can be viewed at a later time. And I believe all presentations will be shared. Luca, can you confirm that?
Yes, we can. Everyone will receive a link with the registration of with the recording of the webinar, and then if you can all share your presentations with me, I'll make sure that everyone receives them.
Okay. Now our first question is for Heini. The question, to quote, Vivino is an amazing app, but its functionality for producers is a bit limited. Do you plan to expand the functionality for producers?
Good question. Thank you very much. I'd say first and foremost, you know, we work closely with the industry today, but originally when we built the app, we built it for, you know, casual wine drinkers, actually people like Mike said, that face a wall of wine in a supermarket to help them buy the right wine. So we built it for that, and that's why we're a little bit behind on the industry. But we have services now. We have actually an email called wineries@vivino.com, and they can send emails there if there's factual corrections there. And also, we've recently started a sponsorship program where if people have extra content, they can pay to get it on Vivino too. So we're definitely planning to extend that both for the wineries and for our users.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. And I'm sure you'll be updating producers regularly as you proceed with that functionality.
For sure.
For Mike Osborn, can you talk about the price points at which different age groups of consumers are purchasing? For example, are millennials buying more expensive wines than baby boomers, vice versa, et cetera?
Yeah, thank you, Gino. And for the question it came from, interesting enough, it might be counterintuitive. I know I've run into folks who assume that it's nice that you have such young consumers. I bet they really love to buy the least expensive wines, or perhaps they're exclusively choosing a $12 wine as opposed to the $50 wine. Shockingly, our highest average selling prices are in the youngest consumer demographics. So our average selling price in 2019 for millennials, instead of being $30 average, which is the average, $32 for millennials, $31.50, if you will, for Gen X, $26 for baby boomers. You get back to an average of 30. The fact is that young consumers do not hesitate to spend money on approachable or accessible luxury products, it seems. And because again, you can have a world-class wine for $15 in some parts of the world, $30, $40, $50, and transport yourself from your living room to Tuscany or Sardinia or elsewhere in Italy. So I would just urge you to be very careful about judgment when it comes to young consumers. I think that you'll find them to be really anxious to learn about authenticity, places, brands, and also they're not afraid to spend.
Can I add something quickly to that, and just confirming that what Mike is saying here, that we've really seen that whereas the older generation is a little bit more stuck drinking the same things, maybe we're sticking to Napa Cab, that's what we're doing. The younger generation is exploring a lot more, and again, willing to pay, but they're also willing to try new things, much more than the older generation.
That's a very encouraging trend for all wine producers, I would say. Kristina, can you talk a little bit about e-commerce initiatives or how you're marrying content and commerce at Gallo?
We have done a lot of pivoting during COVID and have really bolstered our e-commerce initiatives, whether it be e-commerce from our direct-to-consumer businesses, from our wineries in California or Washington, or the work that we're doing with Vivino or wine.com. But I think it really goes back to having content that is compelling and using some of the things that we've seen today to tell your story and to tell your narrative. So developing content, key for us, so pivoting for that. I also think that as we think about digital activities is investing in, I think, Alison, you said, sometimes less is more. being really concise, being really clear on our strategy. What is the message we want to convey, and what is that story we want to convey? So it's been I think a big initiative for us, and we're continuing to look to grow that part of our business, and really diverting some of our marketing dollars to help support our work in the digital space.
Thanks, Kristina. Aaron, this question is for you. How do you foresee retailers, your users, your buyers, surviving, between Heine and Mike and the explosive growth of online? How do you see traditional brick and mortar retailers surviving these online trends?
Well, I think the first major piece is they need to get themselves online. We're finding as we pull our off-premise retail users that over 50% of them are not set up with e-commerce capabilities at this point. So one of our new product lines allows them to use our content library and supply chain integrations to get online quickly and inexpensively. From the users that we have on the storefronts B2C e-commerce platform today, though, we did see an increase of anywhere from 700 to 900% in online orders they were receiving at the outset of COVID. So it is a signal that consumers, as they move online, are going to continue to support local wine shops in their neighborhood who they have a relationship with, whose selection they trust. And it also comes down to the merchandising of those stores locally, and can they find unique offerings that perhaps aren't available to them elsewhere.
Great, thank you. And this question is for Alison, but I believe that Heine and Mike may join in, as well as Aaron and all the panel, Kristina. Alison, is there a particular region of Italy that you could point to that you're finding the most interest from an editorial point of view? And then I would ask Heine and Mike from the sales point of view, any kind of emerging region of Italy. We know about the success of Etna Rosso, for example, but what's the next hot region of Italy?
Well, I mean, this is a little bit to my point. So as I was saying, what is the message? What do you want to tell to people? When you're talking about wine, you have to think about the fact that we're speaking to people who have, had very limited experience with Italian wine, all the way up through maybe a somm who works on a 2,000 Italian wine list. So it's hard to say what the hot wine is for all of those. You mentioned Etna. That's obviously still got a lot of interest. And I would say, as far as wine spectators, consumers, or readers are concerned, there's just ongoing interest in Tuscany and Piedmont. To me, I always like to highlight, personally, I like to highlight Italian whites. I'm dialing in today from Tampa, Florida, where it is warm and sunny. And I drink a lot of white wine while I'm down here. So I think there's so many great Italian white varieties, so much beyond Pinot Grigio. And I don't know that that is necessarily the next big trend, but I push it as often as I can whenever I'm writing about Italian wine.
Great, thank you.
It's interesting that you mentioned Etna. We were looking through data for this and saw that Sicilian wine is the fastest growing region in terms of search activity amongst our trade audience across a variety of regions.
Very interesting. Yeah, that kind of data is very interesting.
Yeah, I can just confirm that we've seen the same thing for Sicily really growing for us too. So that sounds like it's true.
We have a couple of questions about organic wines, natural wines. What are you seeing in trends in terms of searches, and are you seeing more sales for Mike and Heine, more sales in organic wines and more interest? And again, Aaron, you can answer that from the trade perspective, but let's start with the online sales, the retail sales. Mike, yeah, or Heine, do you want to?
Yeah, I can start. I think so far we're adding some new features for natural wines, so they're easier to find and so on. And it looks like they're growing, but honestly, so far our impression is that there's a lot of talk about natural wines. It isn't real volume yet. That's our impression. I definitely think it's going to come. We're not seeing the volume yet.
Okay, Mike, do you have any insight into that?
I think that to the issue of natural wines, we don't have an assortment of the pure natural or orange, wines, if you will. Shelf life is a little rough, for both wholesalers, importers, wholesalers, and retailers on the matter. So let's put a pin in that. But organic wines, or organically grown grapes, and Demeter certified, biodynamic and such, we've been doing a lot of work to organize an assortment. And we just use a green certification, okay? Not that it's green colored wine, obviously, but green wine, to call out all the various certifications. And we probably have more work to do to drill even further onto segregating out those that are SIP certified from Oregon's LIVE program and Salmon Safe, that different parts of the world have, or EcoCert and again, I'm sure every region of the world has some governing authorities. We're not the best at having separated them yet or getting good information. By and by, I would tell you that our evidence is that consumers believe that most wine is healthy, or maybe all of it, certainly at our price points. And therefore, I feel a little bit like many of the family wineries I visit with in Italy, who say, of course my family has been growing wine organically and sustainably for not just for decades, for generations. And this is where our livestock is, and this is where our family is raised. So I kind of buy into that, and I think consumers do when they can see that story, and it doesn't necessarily come down to some decal or some additional label that's required.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to Mike, our focus is very much on sustainable farming practices, certified sustainable wineries, and sustainability as it relates to our community. That's very, very topical, very top of mind in the United States, particularly in the wine community on the West Coast. It's not just about organic, natural, it's about the overall ecosystem of which our community and our people are part of that. So I think sustainable is the word that we're seeing and are responding to as an organization.
I also wanted to jump in terms of storytelling. I think that as everyone said, sustainable, organic, this is an important point to convey, but I don't know that it's necessarily the point or one of your top 3 points. Because first of all, there's a lot of confusion about the sustainable versus organic versus biodynamic versus natural. And to get into all of that, you're completely taking attention away from your winery. So I think it's an important checkbox to mention, but probably there are more exciting, more engaging aspects of what you do at the winery that you can be telling consumers about.
That's very, very helpful and insightful. And we're going to take we could go on for hours. I know you all don't have that time. So we're going to have one more question for Kristina and for Aaron. What about different formats, bag and box, canned wine? Aaron, are you seeing the demand at the trade level, retail sales? And Kristina, as Gallo being the leader in wine in America and the world, what do you guys think about formats, canned wine, bag and box, Tetra Pak, etc.? Aaron,
Sure. So we categorize and track that information, and certainly the most prominent increase that we've encountered has been cans, whether that's ready to drink cocktails or the proliferation of wine brands that are going into can. I don't have data handy on the engagement with those attributes though from the trade level.
Yeah, and we're seeing a resurgence in half bottles. Certainly half bottle offerings are connecting, particularly with people who may be new consumers coming into the premium category. We've seen good growth in half bottles, also with cans, but from a premium standpoint, it's definitely resurgence in 375s.
That's really interesting. And I've always wondered why more producers didn't make 375s. Before COVID, you'd say for the restaurant, right? You go to a restaurant by yourself, you're on business, you don't want a whole bottle, but you want to order something particular, not by the glass. Again, there's just a lot of questions and we can't address them all. So I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I want to thank all the people who tuned in today. And I want to thank the panelists. What a fantastic discussion. I'm honored to have been able to moderate it. And thank you very much, Mr. Mantovani, for the opportunity, and everybody at Veronafiere. So thank you all. And the presentations are available, and the webinar is recorded and will be shared. So thank you very much, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gino. Thank you.
Bye.
Ciao,
Bye.
ciao.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.